We trust you will give us a very insightful exposition on the case we are trying to get some analysis on. So, Mr. Boka, I hope if you are hearing me, we are okay with you. We hope, we trust you will get over your audio connections and then we get going. We have been trying to stream live, but strangely the link is not stable. So we shall upload the clip shortly if we don't get full streaming. So let's get started. Reverend, maybe since you are there, you can kickstart the program with a prayer, word of prayer. Is Reverend Jonas Natoma there?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Please give us a...
Our Father and our God, we are grateful to you for this opportunity to come before you to try to confront us as human beings. We entrust this program onto your hands, trusting you to honor your name. Grant us insight to all that we're going to be talking about and help us educate one another, that in the end, it will be beneficial to everyone that listens and to be a blessing to all of us. We thank you for answer prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, so we have a tutelage of the student. In the wake of the present controversies about rights of students to enter second cycle institutions and the insistence of authorities to make them conform to the rules of schools, a lot of controversies have arisen. And then we have found ourselves in a situation where people are insisting on rights, people are insisting on constitutional provisions, whilst others draw the attention of both parents and students to the fact that institutions that have oversight over minors, the group in which the students are in, have the authority responsibility to keep them safe, conform to rules, since minors by their nature, we know they are still growing and they cannot take decisions with deep insight. And in addition to the training of the home, the school complements with a lot of ethical and moral training, together with some disciplines that minors need and they will need in their adult life. It is in the wake of this that we have invited the three speakers, Professor Terry Ansan of the University of Development Studies, and then we have the Reverend Jonas Muhammad Antoma, First Baptist Church, head pastor of First Baptist Church of Tamale. And then from the side of the legal arguments, we have Mr. David Boka, the law student, I think he's about finishing his course, who will join us and give us some aspects of the legal implications and provisions. So without much ado, I will invite Professor Terry to kickstart the program. So Prof, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bright, for the opportunity and also for setting the tone for the discussion. As I received it, I'm supposed to just take, I mean, we walked through or outlined the authority of the school and implications on children in their custody. I'll begin by saying that, I mean, education at all levels, or education in general, seeks to achieve three very important objectives. And these objectives have been summarized. And I mean, if you've gone through any professional education training, you'll come across this categorization, what has generally been referred to as the Bloom's taxonomy or domain of learning. We have three of them, and these comprise, I mean, every education seeks to achieve three things, and these include building up the thinking or cognitive skills of the learners, building their psychomotor skills, and then the last one, building or enhancing their affective, emotional, or what I call attitudes. So when you talk about educating someone, these are the three things you are looking at generally. I mean, enhancing the person's thinking ability, equipping the person with some skills to be able to, I mean, do something physically with your body. And then the third part being the emotional or the attitude, the character of that individual. So it's a holistic thing. I mean, going through Ghana's educational system and what I've watched so far, I noticed that the focus most of the times is on the first two. I mean, a lot of emphasis is placed on the first two. That is the cognitive and then the psychomotor component. The affective domain, the part that deals with the character, attitude, behavior of learners is often not given so much attention. I mean, we neglect it because we expect subject masters to take learners through all these three things. But a lot of the times when they come, the focus is on the calculus, the focus is on the quantum, the focus is on the art maths, the focus is on those core critical subject matter that only focuses on the cognitive part and then a little bit of the psychomotor, but the attitudinal part of it doesn't come up so much during the class hours. So for example, we have, as a result of these, we usually have rules that govern the way and manner learners conduct themselves when they are under the roof of a particular educational institution. So for example, we have rules like when to sleep, when to rise from bed, when to go for class, I mean, when to go for dining. Our dress codes were defined and we needed to dress appropriately to fit the rules or the requirements of the particular institution that we find ourselves in. We were even taught when to receive visitors, which kind of visitors can be tolerated. You know, all these things were put in place to ensure that learners don't just come out having just intellectual capabilities, thinking capabilities, and psychomotor or skillful capabilities, but you are also prepared to come out as somebody who can, I mean, transform or help improve upon the kind of moral living lifestyle within the society. So that if you come out from an educational institution, you are not expected, I mean, people don't expect you to live in a certain way. When people are misbehaving, misconducting themselves, you are not supposed to be doing such things. You are expected to be the one to lead the way, to show the light. But over the years, I mean, you've noticed that some of the directives and regulations from the regulatory body like the GES has come to water down or take away some of the powers that some of these school authorities used to have. So we've introduced policy where you are not able to punish, for instance, children or learners in school when they go wrong. You know, I interacted with some heads of mission schools just before this, I mean, as part of my preparation. And most of them tell you that, look, for now, discipline has been completely taken away from them. You can't, a child is doing the wrong thing, he is not abiding by the rules, such as when to sleep, what kind of dress to wear, how to keep your hair, how to keep your fingernails. I mean, most of these things that were enforced in some time past, these days are not really given serious attention, because the powers to ensure that some of these things are adhered to have been taken away from the schools. They don't even have, some though had some written down regulations. They've just put it somewhere on the shelves because they cannot actually implement it or enforce it to the latter. You know, when we had these rules in schools, like I said, I mean, it produced, they were good. Character-wise, yes, we were able to produce people who could be described as men and women of integrity. The behavior and character of our learners in schools. We have found ourselves in a situation where the kind of learners we have today think they have a right, even though they find themselves under the umbrella or under the covering of an institution which also has its own rules and regulations. So they come in and it says that, look, I have rights. You say this, though it is part of the rules that we must go for dining at this particular time, we must behave in this manner. I also have a right to live my life in a manner that pleases me, that satisfies me, that gives me the kind of freedom that I expect, you know, to have. And at the time we were taking away some of these powers from learning institutions, we also have these opening up of our airwaves. For example, we had a lot of TV stations springing up during those times when some of these powers were being, we had internet, people had mobile phones. These were things that we did not really have access to in those days when we had these rules all in place. And even if we had them, because of these rules, those rules in the schools, we could not use them. But we relaxed the rules and then opened the space for all of these things to come in. So the learner is sitting in class, or is in the dormitory, or is under your tutelage, but has other places he or she on Twitter, is following the television and watching characters, people exhibiting lifestyles that are a bit, I mean, that deviates completely from what an academic, a trained, a learned person is supposed to exhibit. But they see those lifestyle, and most often it's associated with some kind of wealth and fame. So they easily pick the lifestyle, and they think that no, that is the kind of life they want to lead. This is the lifestyle. This is a right they want to assert wherever they define themselves. And we are helpless. I mean, if you talk to some of the educational heads, they tell you that, well, it's very difficult these days, I mean, to touch people in such categories. So, I mean, you produce graduates, people finish these educational programs, and you try to employ them. They might be good up in the head. I mean, intellectually, they'll be very good, but character-wise, there is a problem because you give them any to enrich himself or herself. I was listening to one of the entrepreneurs we have in Ghana, I mean, one Dr. Macaulay, who talks about how difficult it is to employ graduates today because the guy comes in very intelligent, but the next time he's siphoning all your money, siphoning all your resources into his or her own personal, you know, aims or objectives, plans towards the life. So the character bit is completely, it's really worrying. I mean, for us as a society, as a country, and it is something we seriously need to take care of. I've also realized that a lot of our education today is so much examination centered. So the learners seem to think that once you are in school, all pass that exams, nobody cares, just produce the results. to the extent that sometimes we have parents who even want to aid their children to procure leaked question papers. I mean, leaked questions so that they can prepare and pass exams very, very well. And look, sometimes I look at the records of the kind of grades SHS students come into the university with, and you match that against the performance of the candidates or the students currently in the university, and you see a complete mismatch. Somebody comes in with chains of A's, but the system class and just cannot defend that kind of grade he or she came into the university with. And you begin to wonder how those grades were gotten. And it can only point to some of these things that goes on. Our educational system is so exam, centered, and it is something that we also seriously need to look at. Presently, students or learners don't seem to have much time to study, to go into the books, to look into the books, to pass, sit in class, to listen. We may need to begin to think of other ways of incorporating these affective domain or the part of the training that builds the character of the child into the curriculum again, maybe outside the normal classroom time. We make some time and then give the learners these kind of training. So with these things that I have mentioned, I just want to list a few things I feel that we need to look at seriously as mission schools, even as governments, as politicians, even as they think of, getting involved in the education of our children. I think that disciplinary power has been taken away, especially if you look at our missionaries to insist and get learners to thing we call the right helpers. They seem to think that they are the umbrella of a particular academic institution, and I think that power must be restored back to the management of these institutions so that they can implement them very well. I think that parents, families, one of the things that have affected the proper upbringing of our children is the manner in which sometimes parents and other siblings go to the extent of attacking when their words were disciplined. I remember when I was in school, some years ago, if you are disciplined in school, sometimes the teacher follows up to inform your parents. And if your parents get to know about what you've done wrong in school, if you are not careful, you even get a second dose of discipline at home, in addition to what the teacher gave to you. But we have a situation now where some parents want to confront and attack teachers, and it doesn't really promote the kind of behavior that we expect to see in our children. I also think that we should extend and enforce regulation on advertisements of some alcoholics. Our children, at times when children are very active, words, the kind of words that are being used to describe certain alcoholic beverages, what it can do. Children pick up all of these things, and before you realize, they watch fetish priests demonstrate or, perform magic to produce money, and they think that, that is the way to go. Academics, it's just, indoctrinated into other things, and it goes to also affect us. I also think that, we should be able to regulate the use of social media in Ghana among certain age categories. I know in other countries, in some of the Asian countries, they regulate some of these things. The use of Twitter, WhatsApp, and what can be transmitted or distributed is checked and regulated. So I think that it should be possible for us as a country to begin to look at the use of social media among certain class of our population. And I think the last one I want to mention is to emphasize that I think one key institution that really helped us when we were in school is the Scripture Union. And that faith-based organizations. And I think that we as a society, we should be able to empower them to even continue to do what they were doing for us here for now. And if there are any areas that I need to clarify, I'll be glad to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. We are grateful. And you've given us a couple of things to chew. And we await the responses and reactions of those who hold other opinions. I hope we shall continue to expand and then see the other side and the varying views, so we exhaust all the factors affecting this issue, so that we get a better understanding of it. So whilst we continue, firstly, let's hold on. I will require, for the sake of convenience, just jot down our questions and notes so that we ask our questions after the presentations have been made. I hope we are okay with that. Yes. So without any further ado, let's have Reverend Nantoma take it up from the view of a moral educationist. That's somebody who's training adults and youths in this religious setting.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. To pick it up from where Prof left off, I would ask a question: how do we get here? And the issue is education and moral uprightness they are inseparable, because even in education, we are told that the profession that you choose to learn or to acquire is a discipline in itself. You discipline yourself in it. And so the issue here is for us to look at the fact that the Bible says that train up a child in a manner that he will train up a child in a way that he will go, that when he grows up, he shall not depart from it. I heard Prof made mention of the fact that school authorities are now complaining that authority or the power to discipline has been taken away from them. We grew up in a culture where even if you were coming, not even in a mission school, even if you were coming on a direction and your teacher was approaching, you will change a different route. Why? Because out of respect, you wouldn't even want to meet him, because you fear and you revere him. So to pick it up from there, we are looking at the fact that one Catholic priest said that education without character is destructive. Education without character. This man is a rector of one of our second cycle institutions addressing parents. And he made mention of this, that education without character is destructive. And so he goes on to say this, that this is what they have looked at, and they would want to let parents know that two things have been brought to fore in the quest to educate our wards, and that is one, to give them, to educate them in the classroom, and also to take them to the chapel to train them to be morally upright. Right. So on that context, we need to remind ourselves that we have a serious situation at hand if we take away discipline. To come to think of it, if you look at the fact that people are crying for rise, the question is, before you give somebody the right, you must give him the right to be human before you can give him the right to practice anything. So anything that will make him inhuman is also an abuse and cannot be encouraged. But unfortunately, what we're looking at now is a certain culture that we are introducing, which is not supposed to be entertained if we want to have disciplined, well-educated adults in the near future. I could give you 3 types of culture that we are exposed to. One of them is theonomos culture. Theos, God, nomos, law. In that culture, we see respect for family, the fear of God, embracing moral uprightness, and the encouragement for family to instill discipline in the life of their children. When that is encouraged, we will come to see where more and more people will be attracted. When that is encouraged in an institution, we'll come to see where more and more people are attracted to that institution. Why? Because that culture there instills discipline and encourage learning. And that produces well-educated, balanced adults that could approach tomorrow with confidence and with hope. Then we come to another one called heteronomous culture, which is different nomos law. Now, this culture is kind of a culture that tried to impose its views of the few on the many. So the majority of the people are now dictated to from the outside. And we see that the first one, the theonomos culture, is encouraged and is seen in the African context. We respect parents, we listen to our parents, we listen to our teachers' instructions, we understand them, and we want to happen in our society and in our education, in wherever we can find ourselves as people belonging to God. And God himself also encourages us from the Bible to submit to authority, and goes on to say that all authority comes from the Lord, and that we need to submit to authority. So heteronomous culture will dictate to you from the outside, the few dictating to the many from the outside. Then the last one is the autonomous, where everyone is a law to himself. And that is where we are getting to. But when you look at the autonomous culture, you realize that that culture makes you feel that you are a law to yourself. So where do your freedom end and where do mine begins? The issue is, in looking at the second cycle institutions that we now have today, Character is part and parcel of education. And how do we get it established and instilled in our children? We get it established and instilled in our children through the teachers that has been given the mandate to keep them for a certain period in the institution. Now, what took you there as an individual? What took you there? What made you choose that school is the results and the record that they have. And the record and the results that they have did not come as a result of allowing each and everyone to figure it out on their own. And so it is important for us to realize that what attracted you there is now what you are now fighting against. And it will soon not be attractive enough for you to be there as an individual or your ward. And so God expects us as human beings to adhere to authority wherever we find ourselves. There are rules and regulations there, and the norms there makes it imperative that you obey and comply and stay within the confines of the laws and the regulations that are being observed there. So that at the end of the day, what took you there will be beneficial to you. And so I would say that it's a sad situation, but we can still do something about it. And that is not allowing the so-called issue or campaigners of human rights to have all their way. A particular individual who went to London and studied in one of the universities, and he wrote his thesis on good governance in his MBA. And after that, he went back to his hometown and led atrocities against his own people. I'm told his certificate was withdrawn because they felt that he was bringing the school's name down. Now, if we can see that what makes us who we are is being attacked, what do we have to do? We have to rise up to protect our core values. The core values is what makes us who we are. And in a culture of this nature, if we continue to allow people to have their way, then there's going to be a moral breakdown. And in the end, we will all be getting the results that we are now experiencing day in, day out in our corporate institutions, as Prof was saying. So it is important that we sit up, and I have taken note of one or two things that should help us. That one, we need to bring back discipline by empowering school authorities to instill it. Two, we need to encourage parents to pay more attention to their children when they are home. So to know what they are doing and what, and how to guide them, because we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to God, and we owe it to society, and we owe it to our nation and to our continent and our generation to raise up children that will not
what I can see from the system, the bandwidth of the Reverend is low. Reverend, can we hear you now? System reporting bandwidth. But we get it up and back. So, Mr. Akman, if you are there, can you update us about status?
Yes, you're right. Looks like it's bandwidth is low and he's dropped off. So let's move on whilst we wait for him to recover.
You settle it with, maybe you check up with him. He will have to try to log on, as others are trying to do. Others are saying they can't log on. I sent you a message. I don't know whether you. So please help him out because he will try to log on.
All right.
Let's wait a few moments. And within that, let's.
Maybe someone can continue for the purpose of saving time.
Have we, what about Mr. Boka? Did you settle it within the audio issue?
Yes. It's okay.
Yes. In that case, I don't know whether it's time to recap, but I hope our fellow participants, members on the program are taking notes. So in the end of it, after the presentations, we begin our interactions to see where the authority of the institutions meets the rights and the constitutional provisions that are being talked about and what comes out of it. And as Reverend was saying, the training of the school complemented by the help of, or the training given at home by parents, which is supposed to be ethical and moral, where it also meets the legal implications of giving those minors the rights. I wish we would have had a clear definition of the kind of people we are dealing with here. We are dealing with minors who don't have rights. But let's have David Goka, and then we can begin with the interactions. If Mr. Goka, if you are ready, let's hear your legal perspective. Do we have Mr. Goka there? Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Go on.
You're welcome.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Yes.
Kindly proceed.
We can hear you loud and clear. Let me first explain to our viewers and members. Yes, we can hear you all right. Because of the low bandwidth and the problems with deteriorating audio, when people connect, especially the main speakers, we have been compelled to make Mr. Goka go off his camera so that the little bandwidth that is available to him will be used in the audio presentation so that we can understand him clearly. So that is why you are not seeing Mr. Goka's picture. But I hope subsequently we shall improve upon that. So take over, Mr. Goka, and give us your legal perspective.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Goka. I'm glad to have you all in to the legal of Pre-Tertiary as they are using their mission. Controlled that you play as
Unfortunately, we can't hear much. But I will implore Mr. Goka to reposition yourself.
So much more dividend.
Mr. Goka, I'm afraid we've had to mute you because your bandwidth appears to be very low, so your voice is breaking. We can hardly understand what you are saying. So if you could switch to a different network to get better bandwidth, internet speed, that would help us. Sorry about that, sir. Right, over to you.
Yes, do we now have Reverend Antoma on the line? Do we have Reverend Antoma? Is he back?
Yes, he is.
Yes, so let's ask him to continue. He was giving the main points. Reverend Antoma. Can we see him? Reverend Jonas Antoma, let's hear you.
You are muted. If you can hear us, kindly unmute and continue, sir. Well, I think he might also be having technical issues, so let's move on. Right.
Yeah, in that case, let's come back to Professor Terry. I'm afraid I will have to ask you to expatiate or explain a little further. It looks like some of the expressions you use are a bit high. And Professor Terry, are you there? Please unmute yourself. Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, the expressions on the schools of thought about education and how people are educated were a little bit high. So if you could break down or explain to members the first two, the cognitive and the psychomotor, and how they relate to the third perspective.
Okay.
Please speak up a bit.
All right, thank you very much. So just to recap on what we call the Bloom's domain of learning. I mean, it's an attempt by an expert in the education field to come out with what is expected to see in any individual who goes through education. I mean, if whether formal or informal. And if you go through formal, normally you go to learn things that will build on your intelligence, your thinking capability, so that you go through school and then you come out, you should be able to interpret why 2 + 2 is 4. I mean, you should be able to interpret why 2 - 2 should be 0. You should be able to explain some of these things. I mean, someone who hasn't gone to school maybe can have 2 + 2 being 4, but might not be able to explain the reason. What accounts for 2 + 2 being 4 and not being 5? You know, that's the difference when it comes to the cognitive part of it. You are equipped, I mean, intellectual, you are given that kind of knowledge. Then the psychomotor bit, it's where you are equipped with some skills, you know, ability to use your body parts to fix things, to work things out, and then get them, I mean, functioning, get them working, you know. So that deals with the psychomotor part. So people go to school, they're able to come out to be medical doctors, they're able to come out to use the computer, they're able to come out to fix things. So these are the first two parts. And then the third part is the character part, where after going through formal education, you should not just be hands and other parts of your body, but character-wise. If you say yes, it is yes. If you say no, it is no. I mean, if I entrust you with any property, my business or anything, I should go and come back and then find out that what I gave you has either been enhanced or left at the level I handed it over to you, but not to come and meet what I gave to you in tatters. I mean, virtually reduced in value. You know, and that is the bit that I find lacking when you go through our education. The focus is so much on learning and passing exams, with very low or no emphasis at all on the character. But in the past, yes, we did it. There were rules, there were house masters, there were priests on the campuses to enforce some of these things. We had some teachers that were bold to insist that you behave in a certain manner, you dress in a certain way. What betides you if you dress shabbily and you come into contact with some of these teachers? We're given the kind of discipline that you deserve. But of late, we've thrown that bit away, the affective mood of, domain, the part that builds our character. We seem to have thrown it away, and then we are allowing a lot of just the cognitive part, a lot of cognitive part taking, center stage. So it is about how to incorporate the affective domain into our curriculum. If you are teaching the child 2+2, how do you help the child understand that, you should not fake the answer. You should not fake a character. You should not fake a certain behavior, a certain outcome in class. You should be able to, whatever you get as an outcome in a particular problem, should it reflect your character? You should manifest who you are, so that if you are given a problem to solve and you can't solve it, it's true, it's sincere to come out. It's more honorable to come out and say that, please, I can't solve this problem. I did it and I got 0. I want to be corrected. Rather than trying to cheat, copy, and go around the corner to get the answer, only to come out as a problem to society. Because you can imagine a medical doctor sitting in the consulting room with a fake results, who has cheated through his educational career to get to that place. He will do anything to survive. So if it will be at the detriment of the life of the patients who come there, administer fake drugs, administer fake, treatments and other things, and they go on with it. So the more we emphasize on the affective mode, we have to be very conscious about it. I believe the more we will begin to see some results come out in that aspect of our aim as education, so that we will not be producing graduates who are half-baked, very empty, good in books, but very bad in character.
No, we must come back. We must come back.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
I hope I answered that. Unless there's anything to clarify, I'm fine.
One moment.
Did
We're working the lines to get our other speakers back. And I hope Mr. Booker will be able to do something on 4. Let's see if we can get him to wait one moment.
Yes, Prof, you expatiated well. Thank you so much. I was wondering if there are questions that we could start asking because of time.
Hello.
So that if people have questions, we could start working on responding to some of those questions whilst we wait for the other speakers to continue. So if anyone has a question, especially for Prof, kindly let him hear your questions now so we could work on it. All right, Prof, then let me go back a bit to what you said earlier on about your observations about new entrants into the tertiary institutions who come with very seemingly good grades with 1s and A's and stuff, and yet they are unable to defend how they acquired those grades. Would you, from where you sit, based on your observations, say that it is directly correlated to some form of failure in how our educational system is structured from the basic through to the elementary before it gets even to the secondary school. Do you have any inputs, any ideas or thoughts in that regard, sir?
Yeah, for me, for now, the only records available to compare for any student we have in the university, for example, is your performance, the grade with which you entered and your performance currently in the university. So we put the two together. And if they don't match, we have every reason to doubt or question the qualification you entered with. It's either you didn't really earn those qualifications, the degree you claim, the grades you claim you got into the university, or perhaps you have something seriously wrong with you. You know, because you come in with A1s or a number of A's or ones. That's you are not performing. You are not living up to expectation. Sometimes you find these students deeply involved in cheating in the universities. I mean, every year we just finish our exams in the university, and I have a pile of exam or practice issues I'm going to sit on from next week. And these are fresh students. I wonder what will make a level 100 student be bold enough to think that he can cheat in the university. I mean, you can misbehave, you can misconduct yourself during exams. You know, so I mean, sometimes I believe strongly that it is a background, it is where they are coming from. And also this over so much emphasis we place on examination. I mean, written examination. The student must write exams to pass. The student must write exams to move to the next stage. Maybe we must begin to think of some other ways of assessing student performance in order to determine whether they can move on or be promoted to the next level or not. You can begin to lower the written exam component and begin to add some other practical components, some other character observations to determine whether somebody is qualified to go further, to go higher. I mean, those days, I heard some of my colleagues who went for interviews to be admitted into the medical school. Your dressing alone could disqualify you. You come to present your application form, the way you are dressed alone you might have all the grades, that if you don't dress properly, they might disqualify you. So you have people who will come in neatly dressed, wearing spectacles, and showing that they are up to it in order to get admitted. So I think that we really need to check what is going on at a lower level. Serious attention must be devoted to those places, and then some modifications made to the teaching and examination approach, and put in something more on the affective domain, on the part that builds on the learner's character. We need to focus more on those bits.
Thank you very much, Prof. So, Bright.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we're trying to make some contrivance here, try to see, there's a feedback. But I'm trying to see if...
All right, what you can do is to turn off your speaker. Turn off your speaker and leave only the microphone, then the feedback will stop.
The feedback is strong.
No, it's not gone. Turn off your speaker, at least mute your speaker.
So that means...
So you won't hear us, but we will hear him. When he's done speaking, then you can unmute your speaker so that we can...
Come down.
Right.
Yes. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Have you turned off your speaker?
No way to hear you. I can hear you. Yes, but those on the program.
Right.
Let's hold on a bit.
Right.
Let's hold on a bit while I try to...
Hello, Bright. Can you hear me? Right.
Yes.
If you can hear me, the only way to minimize or eliminate the feedback is for you to turn off your speakers. Okay, we would hear
Yes,
him,
but yes, I've done that. So let's see.
but there's no
Oh.
feedback. If you can hear me, that means your speaker is up.
Yes, hello there. Are you here? Are you there? Can you hear me? There's a system now that must hear me. I'm talking about the system, the console. David, can you do something about this?
That's what I'm telling you to do. I said turn off your speaker and bring his whatever it is close to the microphone. That's the only way to eliminate the feedback.
My speak. Which one are you talking about?
Whatever you are hearing us from, just mute it. Mute your speaker.
Well,
And then let him talk.
Minimize the sound here. I don't know whether if they speak, we'll be able to hear them.
No, for as long as your speaker is active, there will be feedback.
Can you place a Zoom call to them?
No.
You can't place a Zoom call. That will be problematic. And how can you help them get on?
There's a question. I think let's focus on what we have now, and then we'll deal with them behind the scenes. So kindly check the chat so that we can move on. Time is fast spent.
What we can do to help ourselves. Let's see how this. I think it's better.
Right, there's a question. Kindly attend to the question in chat.
You saying something?
There is a question in chat. Kindly attend to it.
Hello. Okay.
So, Prof, whilst Wright is handling things behind the scenes, there's a question in chat from Enoch to everyone. It says, our educational system is based on rote learning.
Let me leave and join it.
Our educational system is based on rote learning, ability to memorize information, reproduce it and pass very well, but after that, does not know how to practicalize same information in everyday life. Lecturers confine research to their handouts only, and anything the student produces beyond the lecturer's handout could be marked down. Is there anything you could say in regard to this scheming allegation?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so let me explain. I think they are in two parts. The part that talks about ability to memorize a piece of information, reproduce it, and pass very well. After that, does not know how to practicalize some of them. Yes, I mean, it's true. I won't deny that. It's very common in our educational institutions. And it's sometimes because of the cost involved in examining students practically or including the practical bit of teaching. I mean, you have how many teaching hospitals do we have in Ghana? You can count them so that if you want to train medical students, for example, you are either going to Kolebu, Konfanoche, or Tamale Teaching Hospital. Of course, Cape Coast has a teaching hospital. I mean, these are not things that should be confined to regional capital. I mean, teaching hospitals should be all over. We should have them because we need them to be able to train people in medicine. But they are so limited. So we can't even train more medical doctors because it is the number we train is determined by the facilities or the infrastructure available. You are teaching people how to raise poultry, how to do animal rearing, and the institution itself hasn't got a farm. Those days where we had school farms and you could give students practical training, these days you only see them in books. And it is not the teacher's problem entirely, but I believe it is a systemic, it's a whole nation problem. I mean, we are not devoting much resources into the training of our people. I mean, we are not putting in so much resources. So teachers are forced to let the learners just reproduce what they've learned, what they've taught them. Now, in the universities, I will also say that, yes, it is happening now at the undergraduate level where, you know, lecturers think that the students should reproduce what they have taught them. And this is because of what we have observed. We've noticed that the kind of products that are churned out from the secondary schools into the universities, I mean, are struggling to cope with those practical, I mean, they are not ready to think outside the box. They are not ready to go outside the lecture notes. For example, you are in class lecturing and the student is interested in whether what you are teaching is examinable. I've had students sometimes ask me these questions in class and I'm wondering, I say, you are not only here to pass exams, but that is how they have been brought up from the secondary school. So you are busy lecturing, you are busy explaining a point, the learner is asking you whether this is examinable. So they just want to focus on the material you have given them to reproduce. And that is what is happening at the undergraduate level. But I'll mention that at the postgraduate level, it's slightly different because there you are dealing with a crop of matured students. So you are able to give them that freedom to go outside the text and produce something that makes sense and can explain what you have offered them in class. You give them a topic to go and research on and then come back. So I think the problem is not just, is there. What you are saying is true, that we give them, this is more of a root learning approach we do. And it's as a result of the lack of investment in certain practical areas of our training. Go to the secondary schools, we have the laboratories, teaching laboratories. How many of them have it? You know, so people are forced to do the book work and then come out. So they bring that behavior into the university, they move with that character into the universities. And we are forced to let them go through that until they get to the postgraduate level where you can give them something more practical. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much for clarifying on that and responding. Right, are you available?
Yeah, let's see whether anyone can speak to the phone. Reverend, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Can you hear Reverend? Hello, Dave.
I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, please try. Go on and finish your presentation. Then we call in Mr. Coker.
Yeah, so I was saying that we need to encourage parents to pay more attention to their children on their own. Now, the issue of pride has to be relooked at. We know that when someone becomes a monster and a danger to human life, he or she rights are taken away from him or her. Now, why do we have to wait until we have a system where monsters are produced and we now take their rights away from them? This is the right time to instill moral rightness in the life of our children is now. And when they rise up and face the future, then we know that we have responsible adults in the system. So government must also promote the family unit by ensuring that laws that are made concerning families and children also seek to give authority to maintain the authority that parents have over their children in the matter of discipline and training. So these things religiously, but things that cannot be compromised in our free society. That will also help us produce a well-behaved, educated generation for the next generation to uphold in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hope the break wouldn't take us train of thought away, because we have time for interaction, and so we'll have to come back to ask our questions upon your presentation. Now, let's see whether we can have Mr. Kuka. Mr. Kuka, if you are there, let's hear you. Hello, Mr. Kuka.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. This is form, so I expect your
Yeah, hello.
line to
Please,
be
can you?
very clear. Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead. Hello, Mr. Kuka.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Please reposition yourself, because we have to hear you.
Please, can I proceed?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello.
But you are online.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes.
You
Thank
are
you
back
very much.
online. You are
Yes,
back
I'm
online.
online. Yes, please. I'm on Zoom.
Mr. Goka,
Hello?
kindly continue. We can hear you. Kindly continue before your network breaks again.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. From the moral point of view, there have been morality control and check that is used to control minors, that is children below 18 years who are in pre-tertiary institutions. And these morality controls and check is intended to prevent moral decadence. But you all agree with me that of late, such morality has been thrown to the background, in that people want to do whatever they feel is good for them without thinking about the consequences. There is always the excuse of human rights. But it is obvious that whatever is done has a good side and a bad side. For instance, a child or a minor is presumed responsible in a society, so the FT is used to govern them. In as much as that rules and regulations there, it must be in tandem with constitutional provisions of the 1992 Constitution. For instance, there is freedom of belief, freedom of association, and freedom of religion. So his belief or religion or way of doing things, that is what he believes in, which is allowed by our Constitution, is to be in conflict with what is practiced in the school, then I think there will be a problem, because they can that law. However, that belief or that creed or that religion should not be against the rules and regulations of the school. I want to cite an example. One cannot say that I have my right to do whatever I like, so I'll go to school and go and smoke weed. No, it's against the rules, and it's also a criminal act. So that you realize that the reason why there is moral is because we try to copy a different culture and try to add it to, and that is where the problem is coming from. I have earlier presenters, and they made mention of the fact what they can do to pass their life upon themselves, how they can manage themselves to become responsible people in society. All that have been thrown to the background. And it's all because can do to become okay within the shortest possible time. But that shouldn't be the case. I will cite another example that on morality ground, we will say that there is a marriage between the law and morality, in that morality frowns on dishonest acts, acts that sort of do things that will not make other members of the society happy. For instance, dishonestly taking something that does not belong to you, that is stealing. Morality frowns on it. And you also observe that our laws in this country is usually based on morality. Thou shalt not steal. So if you steal, that is why stealing has been coded in our criminal laws of the country. For something to be termed criminal, it means all books as criminal, and the punishment for it must be stated clearly. Without that, apart from morality. So you will see our society frowns on the youth wearing of earrings. They see you as a social misfit, and people practice it. But there is no law that will criminalize a person for wearing, a young man for wearing earrings. Though society will see you as someone who is trying to practice something different from what is normally acceptable whilst you are in school. But there's no law criminalizing that act. I'll also cite another example. If someone should have dreadlocks on the head, there's a presumption that is attached to the person that he smokes weed. And though you might not have the evidence to prove same, but because of that presumption, the person is seen in a particular way and he's being attacked. There is no law that says that someone who has dreadlocks on their head smokes weed. But people try to take the law into their hands. The Rastafarian culture, for instance, some of them do agree to smoke weed. So with that one, it is criminal because possession of weed alone is even criminal. So the law will actually deal with you. That is why people who are part of that category who smoke weed cannot be entertained, as in they demanding that it is their religion that you want to practice. You have the freedom to actually practice it per our laws in Ghana. But that religion or the practice should not infringe on our laws in the country. Possession of weed is criminal. So even though you have the freedom to practice your religion, so long as it frowns on our laws, it will not be entertained. It is criminal. So there are rules and regulations governing limitations as to what can be done and what cannot be done. So even as minors don't have the say as in what is their right, what they can do or what they cannot do, others the right to decide where to fellowship, the right to decide what to actually believe in. But there's also checks and balances to ensure that those rights and those beliefs does not frown against any law of the country. These debates about human rights that we are facing currently, actually, there should be a test to actually draw a line as to where the limit of a minor is and where he can go ahead. Without that, we cannot actually say or agree as to where things are or where things are not. So in a nutshell, I'll say that the adulteration of creating the problem. In the past, you see that when a minor is passing and he sees an elderly coming, he will actually divert his way. But now people don't feel that way anymore. They can walk and try to even dress anyhow they want, because there's no law that says you cannot. However, there are certain rules in schools that will control you. Basically, these are some of the challenge. Like I said, so long as any law that has been stated the kill. Hello. Yeah.
So
please, I'll pause here and actually wait for maybe questions and
right.
and also further.
Right. So I have the first question for you. You've said some things. I need to just draw us to this question. Where does my right end and where does someone else's right begin? Okay. Looking at the recent issue about the dreadlocks in Achimota School and the opposing angles from the parents of the child and from the school, and even from the initial instruction from the GES for the school to admit the student, regardless of how that student presented himself. Whose point of view would supersede the other person's, the other parties, if I can put it so? Is it the school's point of view that we have rules and regulations, or is it the student's point of view that I have the right and the Constitution allows me to do this and even to bring it into the school? How would you balance this? Who has more authority over the other, or whose stance is better than the other, if I can put it so? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you for the question. I will go like this. There is freedom of religion as enshrined in Article 21 of the 1992 Constitution. Freedom of belief as well. Now, for the students, minor for that matter, having dreadlock on him, and that is any other thing attached to it, the Constitution is supreme to any other law. The laws of the school is that they don't entertain certain type of hairstyles. Okay, so that one, they also have their laws. So under that circumstance, we can say that the Constitution is supreme to the laws of the school, that you cannot have any other different hairstyle. On the other hand, if the student with a dreadlock who is alleging that he is a Rastafarian, and as part of his beliefs, he smokes weed, then there will be a problem, because our criminal laws criminalizes the smoking of weed, not to even talk about the possession of it. So if that is the case, then the law of the school will reign supreme to the law of the freedom of belief that the student has, that he has the freedom of worship and freedom of association. As in the freedom of worship and freedom of association must not stand in the way of criminalizing or in the way of a criminal act. It shouldn't be a criminal act. Having read dreadlocks alone and saying that's your religion and you don't smoke,
Yeah, can you hear?
it will be not. But
Oh,
but
is close to you.
but if
Coca, the lawyer. Okay. Put this thing. Sorry, Coca, go on.
Mr. Goka, kindly unmute. Sorry, kindly unmute and continue. Thank you.
thank you. So as I was saying, there's a dichotomy of to answer your question. Like I said earlier on, if a student has dreadlocks on the head and he claims that that is his freedom of religion or belief, that is so, and that is allowed per Article 21 of the 1992 Constitution. We also know that the school authorities will also have their rules governing the type of hairstyle a student can bring to school. So long as the freedom of belief and religion of the student does not infringe on any criminal law of the country, then that freedom of belief or religion will reign supreme to the law of the school. However, per Article 19 of the Constitution, for a matter to be declared a crime, it must be stated clearly, and the punishment for it thereof must equally be stated. And we know that the smoking of weed is criminal, not to even talk about possession of it. So if that same student says that his religion is a Rastafarian religion, and as part of their religion, they do smoke weed, then of course, that is infringing upon our criminal laws. So in that scenario, even though there's the freedom of belief and freedom of worship as in Rastafarian, just because it frowns upon our criminal laws, that freedom of belief will not stand, or that freedom of worship will not stand. Because there is freedom, all right, but that freedom is not absolute. There are checks and balances that will ensure that that freedom is not exercised in certain form. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you,
Hello.
Mr. Goka. We heard you loud and clear. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So it seems it's not a straightforward answer. So it would require a lot of deliberation and interventions by various parties to clarify this, even in court, based on what you just told us.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, hello, before you leave, are you there, Mr. Kuka? Mr.
No,
Kuka?
I'm not done. I'm expecting other questions as well.
Yeah, no, before you finish that first part, I want to ask you, now, what are we know if you go to, in some kind of analogy, if you go to a man's house and you attack him and he struggles with you and he overpowers you and you are hurt or even die, the law weighs in his favor that you entered his property, his domain, he has a right there, and he stopped you there. He will not be really punished as a man who has attacked someone because he was acting in self-defense. Now, I want to draw your attention to something. Maybe you have to explain further. The authority of the school within the precincts of the school, with all the responsibilities of any institution, such that under the law, does the law require or does the law see any institution as being responsible for things that go on within their precincts and their authority, so that if anything goes wrong, like we are now beginning to fight over here, within an area over which you have authority or you are in charge, you must be held responsible. Does the law see the school in the same way, such that the student will be seen as being under the school's authority and precincts, or not under the school's authority?
Thank you very much. Under our laws, there's always a presumption that a minor or someone who is below the age of 18 years does not have the capacity to be responsible. And that's the reason why minors are always under the care and control of superiors in the school. So if that is so, or as that has been established, anything that goes on in the school is the authorities have the ultimate responsibility to actually explain as to how and when and how it came about. So that's why there are always that strict rules governing the control and the conduct of minors, so that they don't fall outside those strict rules. Now, to answer your first question, that if a person should go onto the premises of another, and the owner of the premises of the law, that is true, because Article 18+2, that is privacy, or is in quiet enjoyment of his property. It is his privacy, and one is not permitted to infringe upon the privacy of another person. So indeed, it is you who actually who is wrong by infringing on the privacy of the person. So you will be held more liable, because the property is actually. Thank you. Hello.
Yes, I'm here. So
Okay.
in that case, the school, the law will recognize the school as having authority over the kid, isn't it? Hello?
The law recognizes the school as having. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Okay, the law recognizes the authority over the kid, because a child or a minor is presumed as lacking the capacity to be responsible. That is why so if anything goes wrong, the school is liable. This is the reason who complains why, when another offense, the minor is treated differently from the way an adult will be treated. For instance, if a minor and an adult commit the offense of stealing, the minor might not be treated so harshly like the way an adult will be treated, because the adult is deemed as someone who is responsible for his or her actions. So, like it said in popular law parlance, a man intends the probable consequence of his or her actions. So, but that's same does not apply to minors. That an adult, and the adult will suffer maybe the penalty of it, but the child, the maximum sentence, the Juvenile Justice Act maximum sentence. So a child is always presumed as someone who lacks the capacity to be responsible, always under the care and control of the school authorities until you are an adult.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe
Thank you.
we should be coming close to the finishing stages. I don't know whether there are any pertinent questions, but now, Reverend and Prof, we must now reconcile this issue of the parents of these minors taking the institutions to court, and then asking the court to grant them their wishes, that the laws be set aside, the laws of the schools be set aside. In such situations, what do we envisage is going to happen if we allow such things to be done? Is Prof there?
Looks like
Reverend.
Prof is off.
Yeah, Reverend.
I think that maintain their position. The court cannot rule. I'm not saying it. I'm speaking from the moral point of view that the court will be looking at.
The sound is very faint. The sound is very, very faint.
From my phone. Go ahead. How you want to speak louder?
And if these things are put to bed, that you pay attention for, you look at the rules and regulations of the school before acceptance to be there. Now you go in and you want to take the rules to favor your interest. What will happen if tomorrow another person comes with a different set of rules that he or she wants to observe in the school? Then there will be a law and other things in the school. And we will get to a point where none of us, including those that are pursuing the court to rule in their favor, will want to be there. Because it is important for us to realize that before you enter into the place, they introduce you to their rules and regulations. You accepted them. Now you don't want them. And you want to introduce your own set of rules. The only thing you can do is to withdraw your war. But that cannot happen in the school. There cannot be imprisoning, there cannot be examination. And I think that the court in its own wisdom will look at the rules on the table and rules to be able to maintain law and order, so that at the end of it all, what we see happening in the school before we went will continue for posterity.
Thank you too. Any remarks from the forum? Hello, members. If anyone has any remarks or question, yes, go ahead. Galaxy A21S. Please unmute your phone and come in. Hello.
Right, let's move on.
Check your microphone, please.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, we can hear you now. With a lot of, a lot of noise. Go ahead, please, quickly. We are running out of time.
Yes,
Hello.
he has
It's gone
fallen
off.
off. Yes, he's gone off.
Yeah, okay, David, Goka want to speak.
Okay, thank you. The issue of the not allowed admission, you see that it's a new area that is that has come up, and with all new areas that come up, there's definitely bound to be some challenges to be faced. In that it's difficult to ascertain whether the student is actually practicing his religion and because there's always they are sort of hooligans or stuff like that, it makes it muddy for the case of the student. However, if the student can actually show us that is his religion, and then that religion as part of the practices does not injury, then of course it will be
You have muted yourself. Okay. Well, any other person, because we have to come to a close. Can you have anything from Reverend Father Eric? Reverend Father Eric? Any feedback?